we have sequence generating value for primary key. Sequence is used to generate number value automatically. It can be used only in Oracle. Okay, so syntax is create sequence name, increment by value, start with value. So basically what is sequence? Let me show you with example. Let's create first sequence. Create sequence seq1, suppose. Increment by 1 value, increment by value, start with value. Start with 1. Create sequence sequence increment. Okay, here we don't have to provide comma. So sequence got created. Now where to use it? Suppose we are creating any table. Create table stud11 in which we have some kind of ID, and in ID we have number, then we have name, char 10. So we are creating these columns. So what we will do, we have this method next val. With the sequence you can use this following property to access the value. So when we are creating new table, what we can do, after creating this table, we can use this sequence to insert the value inside that table. Let's first create the table. Table got created. Now it's time to insert value. Insert into stud11 values, suppose 11. So value got inserted. But here is the another way to provide the values. Suppose we are inserting value and here what we can do, we can use the sequence that we have created. So we created a sequence, create sequence, and we provided the sequence name seq1. Create sequence and sequence name. This is the sequence name that we give. Then we are going to give seq1, and then we are going to use this method to call this sequence dot next val. Now we are going to click enter and check. Then here we have the ID is got inserted automatically. If we are going to run this again, where sequence name dot get dot next val is getting called, then again by automatically sequence is getting added, new number is getting added. Why this is happening? Because at the time of creating sequence, create sequence name increment by, in increment by we have provided value 1. So every time only one value will be incremented, and it is going to start with also 1. So It's started with 1 when we called first sequence seq1.nextVal. Then it started with 1, and on forwards it's getting incremented by 1. If we have provided at the time of creating sequence, suppose start with 100, then here 100 will be called, and then from on forwards it will get incremented by 1. So 100, 101, 102, 103. This is how it's going to happen. If we are going to change if we have provided at the time of creation of the sequence increment by suppose 10, and here we have provided 1, then it is going to get started with 1, and when we are going to call the sequence again, then it is going to be 11, because the increment by is 10. So that's how sequence works. And be aware this sequence is only in Oracle. In the case of MySQL, there is no sequence concept. Here is the definition of some increment by. What is increment by? It is used to specify the difference between two sequential value generated by the sequence. It can't be 0. Increment by can't be 0, because if it is going to be 0, how it's going to be incremented? If it is negative, then it is going to increment in ascending order. If it is going to negative, if increment by, where is sequence? If increment by is going to in negative number, then it is going to be in descending sequence. Second descending sequence will decrease. On every increment it will decrease. Start with of sequence is used to specify the first value of the sequence. For this ascending sequence, it will start with minimum value. Of course, if we are descending using negative in increment by, then the first value is by default going to be the highest value. So the start with whatever value we are going to provide. In the case of negative, it is going to be maximum value. Start with value must be in the range of the sequence. So let's see another topic, dropping sequence. In a database, a sequence is a database object. It is a database object. That's why we have this nextVal method that we are calling. This nextVal method that we are calling with sequence. It is a database object used to generate unique numerical values. The drop sequence statement is used to remove a sequence from the database. It's important to note that dropping a sequence will permanently delete it along with any associated premises. So drop sequence, for dropping sequence, this is the syntax. Let's try on sequence 1. We have right now this sequence 1 sequence. Let's drop it. Drop sequence SEQ1. Sequence dropped. Let's insert data using sequence. So I am running this again, which is calling sequence.nextVal. Error, we got sequence doesn't exist. If we are going to run this stud11, then no new row got added. This is the old one because we dropped the sequence. And now, so in the case of Oracle, we have auto sequence. We have sequence, but in the case of MySQL, we have something called auto increment. auto increment. It can be used to generate numeric values in MySQL. So auto increment, it is a new topic like sequence. So auto increment, it is used to automatically generate new numeric values in MySQL, and in the case of Oracle we have sequence. So how to use automatic increment? We have to use auto increment at the time of when we are creating the table. So let's try that in MySQL. It is MySQL. Let's create one table. Suppose customers 2, and in CID I just type in primary key, and then we used one constant, and then we are writing auto underscore increment. Then again new column, suppose cname of type char size 10. Let's see, it's got created. Let's see the columns. Customers 2, we have these columns, and in extra, look, we have auto increment. So how to call this auto increment? So when we are insert into table name, and at the time of providing values, we provided values. So simply what we have to do is we have to insert data, insert into customers 2, and we have to just provide values for cname and leave the CID. We don't have to provide the value for CID now. But for doing this type of insertion, we have to provide the column name in which we are providing the value. So it's cname. In cname we are providing value and we are leaving CID. Again, let's provide another value. We didn't provide values in the cname, but at the time of creation of the table, we provide auto increment here along with the CID. Let's see. Let's start from customers 2. The CID got auto incremented, the numeric values generated automatically. So this is how you use sequence. In the case of Oracle, we have sequence to generate numeric values automatically, but you have to create the sequence, then you have to use that sequence name with next val method, next val. And in the case of MySQL, at the time of creating table, you have to provide auto increment, and at the time of inserting values in that table, you have to leave the column in which you used auto increment, that will be automatically generated like here. So this is sequence and auto increment.